Hey, folks, welcome back to the Living in the Virtues of Your Strengths podcast. My name is Matt Ingold. I'm a certified Gallup CliftonStrengths Finder coach and also a certified Catholic coach at Metanoia Catholic. All right, Metanoia Catholic, CatholicCoaching.com. We help people to live and understand and embrace God's abundant plan for their life. And we know that part of that is living within their unique design. We see Strengths Finder as one of these great tools to help people understand the unique and unrepeatable design that God has imprinted on them. And it's a design that has purpose built into it as well. So we come to reflect on who we are and God's design here through the lens of our strengths. We come to know our purpose, which is pretty profound here, folks. So today on this podcast, where we always explore Strengths Finder through the lens of how do we live them out virtuously in a way that will build up the kingdom of God rather than take the bricks off. That's our intention here. We're going to be exploring here today. Drum roll, please. Adaptability. Okay. It's the low one for me. It's my second from the bottom. But it's a good thing that God has a sense of humor because he paired me up with a beautiful bride that hers is second from the top. All right. So we're just kind of flip sides of one another. And so I can think of some circumstances that I'll share later on the call. Remind me if I forget that Aaron's adaptability was key for our business and keeping us hopeful amidst challenges, unexpected challenges. Okay, so what are we looking at this for this podcast? We are focusing on adaptability, what drives the person with adaptability, and then what is a virtuous or vicious expression of this talent? What might those look like? And then what are the mindsets behind them? This is where we bring in the mindset coaching element of what we do, recognizing that with everything that we do and everything that it stems first from a thought, okay? And so we want to get curious about those thoughts that are inclining us to show up in these habits in either a virtuous or vicious way, okay? We want to live virtuously, always where we get the best fruits. So we start our conversation here and just going through what I call the baseball card that Gallup gives us at certification. And it's just a real high-level rundown of the talent. Okay, so the person that's high in adaptability might say things like this. I am a here and now person. I'm a here and now person. All right, not focused on the future, not focused on the past, here and now, very present. I will, what are they doing? I will react with immediacy to the immediate. With immediacy to the immediate. I bring, what's their contribution? A willingness to follow the lead of change. I need, what's that requirement? That thing that makes it easy for them to show up in this place of contribution. I need present pressures that demand an immediate response. There's that word present again. Present pressures that demand an immediate response. I love, what's the thing they value? They love spontaneity. That's my wife. They hate, right? Predictability, opposite of spontaneity. You can see how the unlikely pair to adaptability is discipline, which loves predictability, right? Loves a process that gives a predictable outcome. Metaphor image is like a river or go with the flow. And then that barrier label could be directionless. Okay. All right, so let's jump over to the word picture here. It's always fun. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the word picture and follow it along here. But if you're just listening in, I will explain what we are looking at, help kind of flesh out this picture of adaptability. We don't have too many people very high on this. We have more people lower on this than on the call, but still, nonetheless, we've got some strengths nerds out there that can really make some contribution. And Cindy, you are in the middle of the pack at 18. So you're going to be carrying us today, Cindy. No pressure. No pressure. The person that was high adaptability would have been like, great, let's do it. Go with the flow, right? I can be that person. That's okay. All right. So the first image I have here is if anybody's a fan of Friends, I've got the picture of Ross carrying the couch up the stairs and he's going, pivot. All right. So if there's any friends there, they're trying to pivot this couch up this stairwell, right? That's what I see adaptability doing often. And they have no problem. Let's pivot. Okay, circumstances aren't ripe right now for what we want to do. Let's pivot. Let's change. Change is fine. We can adapt. Go with the flow, right? I have a little kind of image of a little breeze that's supposed to be wind here, okay? Because we hear the term winds of change. Just go with the winds of change, all right? So in the same way that we can't determine what direction the wind is coming from, even you hear in scriptures, the Holy Spirit is like the winds. It blows where it wills, right? So very adaptable. There's a docility that the person that's high in adaptability has, which I can only imagine with me at my 33, it's something that makes them very responsive, perhaps in a virtuous expression, responsive to the promptings of the Holy Spirit. Okay, I've got the lemon being made into lemonade. I'll say, okay, so life hands you a lemon, the adaptable person will we'll pivot. We'll make some lemonade. All right, that's what we're going to be selling today. I've got an image of a stream. And just because that's what we hear, it's like just go with the flow of the water, right? And then finally, I've got this image of another great movie that I love. Okay, I'm a movie guy. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And John Candy, God rest his soul, his character, Del Griffith, I think is a picture of adaptability, right? No, it's, my thing is, my motto is I go with the flow like a twig on the waters of a mighty stream, right? Just go with the flow, just roll with it, okay? So we can certainly see in his character, which is a beautiful, yet there's some tragic elements of his character, even though this is one of those comedies that's also a drama to it. Oh, I love this movie. Love it. Love it. It falls in that right there with Uncle Buck too, around that same era. But we can see, even if we looked at Del Griffith and did a psychoanalysis of him, we can see where his adaptability is even going to overdrive to the point where he's not able to process properly the loss of his wife, right? So spoiler alert there. Okay. So we get a little bit of a picture of somebody that's highly adaptable, can maintain that hope and amidst certain situations, but at the same time can be to the point where they're not looking, they're no longer being present to what they are unwilling to face in that moment. Okay. On that harrowing note, how might we flesh out adaptability here a little bit more? If there's somebody can come in here and add to this picture, doesn't matter if you're high or not, but maybe somebody that's highly adaptable. And this is maybe a good place for me to share a story in a moment. Joan, you raised your hand. What do you got?
Yeah, I have a friend who's very highly adaptable, and her nickname is Chameleon. She's a chameleon. She can constantly change whatever she needs to change, hairstyle, location, and it's effortless. It's exciting.
Got it. So the chameleon, I see that could be something, or even putting a chameleon up here, and that certainly is something that will change based on the present surroundings. Awesome, Joan. Mm-hmm. Harriet, what do you got?
I was going to say something with somebody juggling a lot of tasks and a lot of things. Or if somebody could throw them in another bowling pin, juggling, a juggler.
So that's interesting. And I know that we took our straw poll. Harriet, you have adaptability at 27, but then also you have a ranger. That's what, your number 4? So number ranger's number 5. Okay. So you got a ranger up top. And an interesting distinction between adaptability and a ranger, and I shared it at the beginning, I'm going to share it again. This is one of the things Gallup gives us. So it says adaptability responds to changes in an environment. Okay, so they're responsive to changes in an environment. But the ranger initiates or manages changes in an environment. Okay, so maybe the person that's high in adaptability may do well when suddenly a new bowling pin is thrown into their juggling, right? But ultimately, they may not be the person that's going to be keeping the pins in the air, right? That may be something that's more the task of the arranger, right? We also look at this as a relationship strength, okay? But I can certainly see it in the sense of just of being adapting to change. I remember Erin's adaptability and ideation showing up, and really Erin's low in terms of execution. I think her first executor strength is at 16. As my first influencer is at 14. Okay. Doesn't mean that we can't influence or execute. It just means that we prioritize other things. So I remember it was a point where we're getting ready to publish our first copy of our journal, and literally getting ready to order 1,000 of these things. And then we started to read into some of the things that we were citing, heavily citing, heavily leaning on. And we started to realize that if we had published this, we could potentially be infringing on some copyright. And I remember this was something I was like, so happy that we found it. And this was an obstacle to getting things done. At this point, my responsibility, my achiever was all getting triggered because I was about to, finish the project. And now we got to go back to the drawing board. Okay. So while I sat and sulked, Erin went downstairs into the office and comes up and she goes, I got it. I got a solution. And she had, from that point, her adaptability had shown up and had pretty much rewritten the questionable part of our journal. And quite frankly, that part that she's rewritten has become like a central part of who we are at Metanoia Catholic and how we approach and what makes us very distinct from some of the other secular coaching worlds that are out there that use similar kind of cognitive behavioral coaching methods. And we have exercise 6 in our journal, which is where we do our repentance and our renouncing work. And we forgive, that sort of spiritual release work. That's now built into our journal because of Erin's adaptability in that circumstances where I was just like, you know what, tending more towards despair. In that place of hope, she created something new. Her ideation could show up and create something brand new. And it was beautiful, beautiful. Brought in all her work that she had done in Unbound and prayer ministry, all the work that she had done in terms of the cognitive behavioral coaching. And here we are, right? We've got something that's really a beautiful, authentically Catholic method here. So that's a little story about how adaptability can certainly show up. What else? What else? Any other thoughts on what else we could use to describe adaptability? Now, it is a relationship theme. And so maybe something else that we could put on here, is just being very adaptable to relationships. It sounds kind of like woo, right? In the way, Joan, that you described it, because often woo, we talk about woo as the chameleon strength. I think that was even one of the pictures that we had in our word picture of woo was a chameleon. They have the ability to just kind of morph to their surroundings. But adaptability is one of those things that just, it's not necessarily motivated by accommodation, so to speak, where woo has that desire to really be accommodating and hospitable, makes somebody feel at home. Adaptability, I'm wondering if it has a little bit of a different motivation because it's responding to changes here, not just responding to a person, but a change in the environment, Gallup says. Something that was there or is there now that wasn't there before. And again, this is where we see this talent. They're so present. They're so aware of the changes. They don't ignore them. They're very attentive to them.
Is it more like a camper? Someone who likes to camp and so much.
A camper?
Yeah.
Tell me more, Joan.
Well, I mean, I never wanted to go camping with my son, a Boy Scout, but my husband loved it. Will it rain? Will a bear be in the tent? And we'll figure it out when we get there, kind of thing. I mean, of course, they had some do's and don'ts ahead of time, but they really had no control over what was going to happen.
I like it. Okay, a camper. So being able, even going into an environment that has some unpredictability to it, like we said right in the beginning, they prefer spontaneity, right? Something that mixes it up versus, the standardized, okay, I know that, there's going to be a mint on my pillow when I arrive at my hotel. I can guarantee that. It's got the 5-star reviews. Who knows, maybe the person that's high adaptable, it's not just going to a KOA campsite either. It's we're beaten brush and we're finding our own place off the beaten path because we're fine there. Jane, what do you got?
I was thinking of the picture of I don't even know what it's called, I guess, a 4-wheel drive truck where you can, put it into, and I've never even used it, but you can put it into different gears, depending on like if it's snow or if it's mountainous, or you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Yep. You've got kind of that responsive design that can be, you can switch it and pivot it, pivot. You can switch it to whatever is needed. So maybe it's got, first, second gear. If you got like all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, depending on what kind of load that you're hauling. If you want to engage your Hemi, or if you want to be something that's a little bit more green, do that. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Got it. All right. Adaptable under controls. Great. Okay. All right, team. I think we've explored this pretty well. Let's dive into what I perceive to be the motivations. This is my stab at this. And so I think that the person that's high adaptability is driven to find hope amidst unexpected changes or obstacles. They find hope amidst unexpected changes or obstacles. Okay, versus the converse to that, think about the story that Aaron and I told about our journal. Converse to that is I just kind of sat and sulked, right? I sat and just held the space for my disappointment in that my achiever wasn't going to get its dopamine hit that day. All right. But it certainly wasn't a place of hope. We always say at Mennonite Catholic that disappointment, which is a failure to arrive at an appointment, that's what it means. Disappointment never gets you to your next appointment. But that hope, conversely, Erin and her high adaptability, she showed up in hope, and that hope created a space for her ideation. And we just adjusted the goal line slightly, and the fruits were even better, right? I think of the way that God will often inserts in his providence, will often insert these changes or perceivingly undesired obstacles in our path. Why? We have these moments of desolation. Well, maybe he wants us to pause before we go down a path that we perhaps ought not to go down. Maybe he's inviting us, he's steering us in another direction. And sometimes it takes a storm. Sometimes it's a 2x4. Sometimes it's a car accident. Sometimes it's something that's very difficult, tragic, traumatic. I know we have people on this call that have had their share of that. But that person that's high adaptability has this unique ability to see the silver lining, not in a way that is dismissive of the pain, but rather as something that chooses hope. Because there is always reason to hope. And they're just a reminder of that. I see them being a reminder of that. Aaron's adaptability, I can tell you on our team where we have a number of us that are high restorative. Okay. We can see problems. And problems, you can often get tunnel vision on problems. Not saying that restorative is always prone to despair. I mean, restorative in a virtuous sense is seeking solutions, enjoys solving problems. But perhaps a restorative in overdrive can sometimes take you down a place of despair. Aaron is so good at being able to find hope and say, okay, well, what's the solution? Let's not focus on the problem. Let's focus on the solution, right? Yeah, that's a reality. We're dealing with that over here. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? You find it even making her way into her coaching. So anybody that's ever been coached by my bride, right? It's like, okay, yeah, some extreme things, some terrible things happen to you. Yeah, I can see how that's sad. Yeah, there's been an objective violation of your dignity. Yeah, that should not have happened. I got it. Yeah, let's hold the space for that, right? See empathy showing up. But then also it's just like, okay, what are we going to choose? What are we going to do? You get to choose. You get to choose. We can't change that. Let's hold the space. Let's acknowledge that there's been a change in our environments, but let's own our response. How do we want to respond? How is this landing here? How is this landing with the rest of the group? Finding hope amidst unexpected changes or obstacles. Jane, what do you got?
Well, it's interesting that you use the word hope, because when I think of adaptability, at least when, first of all, it is very mysterious that it's 32 for me, because I do find myself adaptable when I choose to. And in those experiences, what I have brought to the table is peace. Like, I'm at peace no matter what happens. I'm at peace if, we decide to go to a restaurant that's 45 minutes away rather than 20 minutes away, or I'm at peace whether we stay home. Like, I'm at peace. So maybe that's just my internal aspect rather than bringing what I'm bringing to the table, what I'm contributing. There's always that internal and then the external, right? So that was just the only thing that I would, and I don't even know how to, like, what's my motivation to that is to accept all things all the time. And I think that's what adaptability does. Because you just mentioned with Harriet, as far as like, what's the difference between a ranger and adaptability? A ranger wants to kind of lead the change, whereas adaptability accepts the change or receives the change. I don't know. Those are just thoughts that are coming in my head at this moment.
Yeah. And as we're sitting here, I'm always like pulling up people's their profiles when I've got them to be able to even look through that lens here, Jane. So like, here you're saying that hope, well, hope we certainly can attribute to positivity as well. All right. So positivity has that ability to have that hope and that drive towards that hopeful ends. You see positivity and achiever even being something that can be there. You're also high intellection, right? And so even conceiving of what that hopeful end looks like, but then taking the action to kind of bring people there, that could be something that could be part of it all, Jane. Yeah, we get these strengths babies that kind of come together sometimes, as we always say. Michelle Dunn likes to refer to them. I saw a hand up before. Was that Joan? Was that you?
Yes, it's interesting. My son and I are reading together an audiobook by David Goggins. Have you ever heard of him?
I have not.
He describes in detail what it's like to go through Hell Week to become a Navy SEAL. And so much of it is his mind and his thinking and the hope in his mind. But it's a classic example of being adaptable, because they are unexpected obstacles. They're not told ahead of time what's going to be done to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to find hope in their mind. Even if their body tells them to quit, it's their mind that finds the hope. So I think that's a good definition of it. That's all I'm saying.
Find hope in their mind, even when their body is telling them to quit. Beautiful, beautiful. I think of St. Paul. I don't do the things that I want to do, and I do the things that I don't want to do, right? There's this battle between the mind and the flesh that St. Paul's talking about there. Veronica, what do you got?
Just echoing on what some of the others said, what came to mind was that for those of us that are not strong in this strength, perhaps honing in on our strategic strengths to look at opportunities, possibilities, and what could be. Like you were saying earlier about Aaron using ideation, those of us that have strategic or intellection or futuristic, even other ones could possibly look at, what's possible. So maybe we do have to pause, maybe we do have to pivot, maybe we do have to find a new way, but using those strategic gifts or relying on someone with those gifts to help us kind of process our next steps. So that's what came to me.
Veronica, I love it. I love it. And you almost gave the textbook what Gallup's is the 4 ways to really deal with an area of your lesser themes or perhaps a weakness. First thing you do is you summon those strengths. You look to your top 10. You say, okay, how can I bring these strengths to bear in a way that, perhaps as a situation needs adaptability. I don't really have that. It's not really my habit, but I'm really strong in these areas. Let's see if I can bring these to bear. Second thing is to collaborate with other people, partner with somebody that has that gift. Third thing is maybe to build a little bit of structure into your life, right? Maybe there's somebody that that can help you. Maybe you phone a friend, right? Because you're not necessarily prone to that same hope that the adaptable person is prone to, and you could really lean on them to give you that perspective, that hopeful perspective when you feel inclined towards the melancholic, towards the, you know, the despairing, the spirals and things like that. And then finally, it's just the fourth one is just do it, right? Just do it. Awesome. All right, folks, thank you so much for sharing here. Let's press on into the second part of our podcast here. We start discussing really what does it look like in a virtuous expression, adaptability, that is. How does adaptability look like lived out virtuously? So we draw from the book Living in Your Strengths, Catholic edition. And this is the one that they had for adaptability. I love this verse, okay, from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 12 through 13. I know how to live in humble circumstances. I know also how to live with abundance. In every circumstance and in all things, I have learned the secret of being well-fed and going hungry, of living in abundance and of being in need. I have the strengths for everything through him who empowers me. All right, so that's Philippians 4, 12 to 13. As we look at this verse, these two verses here, how might this inform how adaptability might show up virtuously? Okay. I mean, when I look at one of the things that stands out to me is this detachment that St. Paul has from his circumstances. There's just a detachment. Doesn't matter if I'm living in abundance or if I'm shipwrecked for the fourth time. Doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. I can pivot. And the reason why I can pivot is not because I'm highly adaptable. It's not because I have it number 1 or number 2 in my strengths assessment. But I can do it because the only reason that's happening is because there's a God who loves me that's allowing it to happen, which means that he is going to empower me with his grace, which is sufficient to do what needs to be done, to respond how I need to respond without falling into despair, without falling into vice, without falling into sin, without falling into ungodly self-reliance. So you can see how his adaptability, the linchpin of Paul's adaptability here is what? His relationship with the Lord. I have the strengths for everything through him who empowers me. Corey nailed it. All right. Fully relying on God, that faith. That's a piece here. What else here, folks? What else is standing out? What else could we glean from this? Joan.
Anna Marie Schmidt, who probably one day will be canonized as saint. She was in the concentration camp, but she grew up a very wealthy person in Hungary. And she remembered this scripture as a kid. She was probably 12 years old in the camp. And she had no more physical strength to work all day. And they were only being given worms and, sawdust to eat. So she remembered this scripture, and she said it was that scripture that got her to work every day and kept her alive throughout the entire camp. And she survived, came to the US and lived till she was in her 90s. That was the scripture that she said kept her going.
Amazing. As you share that, the movie that comes to mind is Shawshank Redemption, right? And there's that scene after Andy Dufresne, the protagonist, comes out of being in the hole for a month or 2 weeks or something like that. And they say, how'd you stand it? And it's like, hope. I had this hope that kept me going. I hear that there. Corey, what do you got?
Just real quick, I almost didn't recognize that it was Philippians 4:13 because it's so frequently heard, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. I really like that, the last sentence here, I have the strengths for everything through him who empowers me. It makes it more complete.
Tell me more, Corey. Tell me more. What do you mean?
Well, it's one of those verses that we see on, everywhere. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I just
Mhm.
feel like when I'm reading through him who empowers me, it's that paraclete. He's right there with me, and he's transferring his strength to me in order to live through maybe not so great circumstances or in a despair. And it's like clinging together and moving forward. I'm sorry, I lost my thought.
No, you're getting it. Yeah, this
Um,
is it. Yeah, we're working on this together. So clinging together or moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, to live virtuously, to go through those circumstances that in despair. I know in my own life, at times that's when well, it's like when when you're losing energy and you want to go for the quick fix and grab a candy bar. It's like something that's might be a momentary fix, but really in the long run isn't great.
Mhm.
Versus like maybe having something that gives you genuine strength and is constructive, not destructive. So I think
Love
when
it.
we're tested, sometimes those tests, I might want to go for that quick fix versus knowing that the Lord will, help me to live virtuously through that and not go for something that is would not be good in the long run.
I love that phrase. You said genuine strength gives me genuine strength. So true strength, something that will truly bear the weights that the strength is needing to hold. Thanks so much, Corey. Something that Cindy writes in is continually seeking to become who God wants me to be. It can be daunting, but exciting. What are our options, right? My options are to stop because it's hard and uncomfortable, or run the risk of missing out on when whatever he has in store, and just this realization, he's not done with me yet. Yes. So there's this adaptability to being able to see his providence even amidst those circumstances that in the present moment, we wish were different. Veronica.
Hi, sorry. Another thing that came to mind when you were speaking about this was, you were talking about Shawshank Redemption, or even I think of Viktor Frankl or others who've been in really difficult circumstances. Like how did they persevere? Like, for me, I'm just thinking it was the fact that they had hope for, a new life, or, in the Christian life, we can say the hope of heaven. Or just a vision for a better future. And I think that's really important, like for when people are going through something really difficult. And if it's just a minor setback, again, just, like I think what many of you already said was just sort of relying on the Lord and knowing that, we are taken care of, and that sometimes he allows these things to make us more reliant on him. And for those of us who struggle with ungodly self-reliance, or just maybe even fears of relying on other people in some capacities, this is a way to sort of, just kind of, like I said, rely on others and be more searching for, what is propelling me forward, like what's the bigger picture, and sort of like how can I focus on that.
Beautiful. Veronica, thank you so much. Jane, take it away, and then we'll move on to our next slide.
Real quickly, what it also brings out is, we're so founded on St. John Paul II, but the Imago Dei, right? The dignity and the value of the person doesn't rely on the circumstances. And I think that really brings up, and my son called me the other day, and he's in a situation, and he's going to be the leader in this training, and it's never happened. He's always had somebody beside him, and there were some circumstances that were happening, and he was kind of freaking out. And I just had to remind him, like, wait, remember who you are. It doesn't matter, all of this stuff. He had identity theft, so his card was like, frozen, and he's like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money. What do I mean to do? And I'm like, okay, calm down. Relax, remember who you are, remember why you were given this mission, remember your gifts, and And it was just, and it really, and he's been texting me, the past couple of days and just sharing with me of like how he's been able to accomplish what he's been accomplished, because what I really spoke the truth into him about, like, you remember who you are. It's not the circumstances. And how many times do we we equate the circumstances into who we are? And I love that coaching question that we ask at, what are we making this mean about me? Right. And it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with who God created me to be. And that dignity, that value, that imago Dei, that's like, no, stop. And that's what I think all of those diarchs, even Maximilian Kolbe, yesterday's feast day, right? Like the soldier that had to kill him told him to look away because he looked with him with love, such love. Like his love was not going to be taken away because he had love. He knew who love was, and he exuberated love. And it didn't matter whether he was in a box or whether he was going to get tortured or whatever. Love was there, and it was anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly see, the strength for everything through him who empowers me, even in the most drastic of circumstances, like a concentration camp. I mean, it's hard to imagine anything that's worse than that. No, it's beautiful. And I find it ironic that your son suffered identity theft, and the words "remember who you are," "remember your identity," were the ones that spoke to his heart. Okay. So I mean, that's even the introduction to the morality section of the catechism. Christian, know your dignity, remember your dignity, remember who you are. Okay. So as we're remembering who we are, grounding adaptability and an understanding of who we are, that Christian anthropology, Catholic anthropology, what are some ways that it leads to interdependence? So we look at interdependence as a way of virtuous expression of a strength. And then if it goes independent, dependent, or codependent, that's more of a vicious expression. So what does it look like? In interdependent relationship, your strength is being seen. You're giving people an opportunity to freely receive the gift that you are and the gift that your strength gives, or freely decline it, right? So here I've got nurtures a spirit of hope, adaptability, expressed virtuously or interdependently, might look like this. It nurtures a spirit of hope and docility in a team amidst unexpected obstacles or change. Okay, so again, this is the team hits a roadblock. They wanted to go to point A, and suddenly point A is no longer an option for them. Or the path to point A is no longer an option. What are we doing? What's the person with adaptability doing? Doesn't mean that they're high strategic and they can figure out a new way, but the person that's high adaptability may just be like, hey, don't worry. We'll figure it out. We got this. And that might just be enough to kind of get those strategic thinkers out of despair and move into a place of hope and jumpstart their brains so they can actually start living in their strengths a little bit more rather than their overuse pattern. Okay. So that might be a virtuous expression of it. The vicious expressions over here, hey guys, I'm open to some interpretation here because leads to independence. The first thing I came up with looking through my lens of my executor strengths was won't adhere to procedures. So the person just marches to the beat of their own drum. But they love or they despise the predictability so much that they're always just going to operate however they operate, right? But a lot of it an independent expression based on what we just explored. It might be just that their hope rests in themselves. The person that is adaptable, that perseveres, that has that hope. An independent, vicious expression of it might be, I put my hope in myself. I put my hope in my own strength. I'm the marble man. I can figure it out. I got this. I got this. All right. So that could also be something that I could see the person highly adaptable going independent in a vicious sort of expression. Okay, on the dependent side, yeah, inflexibility, right? It's like the opposite of going with the flow, right? They're completely inflexible, right? Leads to dependence, all right? So in a dependent relationship, it's usually where you need somebody else, you depend on somebody else to show up a certain way, think a certain way, feel a certain way in order for you to feel a certain way about yourself, okay? So perhaps dependence and adaptability might look like this. They need people to break from the routine in order to feel appreciated. Right. So what does that mean? All right. Person that is highly adaptable needs an environment that is changing. Right. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to break from the routine, but sometimes it's also good to stay the course. You know, this is something that I recognize as in the military, right? If part of your plan was you needed to have artillery fires falling on the target at that point in order for your troops to advance under the cover of that artillery, and all of a sudden comms go down, your radio goes down, you can't call that artillery in anymore. Well, the adaptable person might just say, just charge. Okay, that might not be the best way. That might not be a good pivot. We might need to actually stick with the plan here and deploy that adaptability to something that doesn't just throw the plan out completely and just can the plan. All right. My camera, what's going on? My camera just went out. So I'm going to pivot over to this camera, which doesn't look that great, but hey, we're going to go with it. I've got a halo. Give me a second here, folks, while I adapt. Okay, so we've got leads to dependence, needs to people to break from routine in order to feel appreciated. Why? Because they really thrive in that environment when things are changing. All right, so this thought, I need things to change in order for me to feel valued, right? In order for me to show up in my strength. And so it's kind of like creating the unnecessary change for the sake of it. And this is where it goes into codependence. Change for the sake of change. Pivot. We're just going to move because I enjoy the satisfaction that comes from just being adaptable in this situation. And, but even when it's not necessary to be changing. Okay. How is this landing on everybody? How's this hitting? What do you got, Corey?
Well, the only thing I could think of is in regards to the codependent part, where somebody, like you said, change for the sake of change. It's almost like maybe an addiction cycle or something to go, let's go here, now let's go there. And just sort of for that need for attention to constantly feel enmeshed with somebody else and not really using this as a strength to lead, using it more as a kind of to create chaos.
Yes. Creating chaos. Ooh, wow. Creating the chaos. It sounds like the overuse of the restorative that creates problems to solve, right? Because they delight in creating and solving the problems. Jane, what do you got?
Yeah, I was also thinking about directionless and indecisiveness, and that they just, again, that codependence, they want to change just to change, but they don't really have a purpose for the change. And it kind of makes me think of like the head swivel, right? If you've got somebody that's in adaptability, that's in a vicious side, being used viciously, then the rest of the team is just like wing, and you can't even catch your breath because you don't even know where we're going. They're just changing all the time for the sake of changing, and it exhausts the rest of the team. And I've experienced that. And it's just an interesting perspective of like, where are we going? So I don't know what happened.
Jane, thank you so much. I was trying to adapt again to pivot and get my camera back in operation, but you know what? We'll just roll with it. But thank you very much for adding that. Folks, anything else on these? Again, those codependent relationships, those are the ones where it's just like, we're just going to make accommodations to one another, right? It's two people entering a relationship, focus on making accommodations, very shallow. Nobody really sees the other person. Nobody really honors their gifts. They just kind of like stay where they're comfortable. Nobody really grows. Veronica, what do you got?
Hi. So what came to mind when you were speaking was under the dependence, the vicious side of dependence needs people to break from routine in order to feel appreciated. When you said stay the course, what came to mind was basically the compounding effect and sort of this idea that even in moments of uncertainty or when things are uncomfortable, staying the course is the best way. And the commitment to the path, even if you need to recalibrate, even if you need to pivot, but sort of how important it is to, if you want to stay in the virtuous side, to kind of, keep going versus maybe like constantly changing, like I think Jane had mentioned. So yeah, that's what kind of stood out to me there.
Yes, there is such a thing as a vice of inconstancy. Inconstancy. It's actually one of the sub-vices of prudence. So prudence, like really wisdom here. Inconstancy is when you don't stick with the right path, right? Or you're not committed, you're uncommitted at some point. And so perhaps the person that's high adaptability might just be going with wherever their passions are leading them at that moment. Okay. But it's not necessarily reason that's leading the change. It's more their emotions, their antecedent emotions, as Aquinas we call it, that are leading to the change. Okay, so we wrap up here. What are some of the virtues or the virtuous expressions, or maybe some of the mindsets that could jumpstart what we're looking for here? Okay, so jumpstarting a virtuous expression might look something like this for adaptability. How can we turn this obstacle into an opportunity? How can we turn this obstacle into an opportunity? All right, so adaptability hits the wall, hits the obstacle. How do we turn it into an opportunity? Okay, where's that send your mind for people that are listening and they're high in adaptability? Maybe you just go there naturally, right? Well, perhaps this next question might be something that, again, tames it. Do we need to change the entire plan or just tweak? Do we need to throw the entire thing out or just tweak, just refine? And notice how both of these, we're engaging our mind with this. This isn't something we're kind of divorcing from passions at the moment. We're just looking at this through a very objective lens. Because again, any of these talent themes, when they're being led willy-nilly by their passions and not subject to reason, that's where they can go off the rails. So how do we ground this adaptability and making sure that when we're changing, when we're pivoting, we're doing it in a way that turns this obstacle into an opportunity, but we're also not creating unnecessary change and all the downstream effects that happen from that. Okay, and some other thoughts here on the vicious expressions of these things, of adaptability that we might capture is when we find ourselves saying, don't put me in a box. Don't put me in a box. All these rules, all these regulations, all these processes, just painting me into a box. It's like, no, like a stream, like you go with the flow. Well, the stream has boundaries. It has banks to it, right? The stream doesn't feel boxed in by that. It actually gives momentum and movement to the stream. It gives life to the stream. So perhaps, again, if you find yourself, don't put me in a box, maybe the question is, how can I operate? How can I operate fluidly within this box? What's the freedom? Where's all the freedom to just respond to the present moment within the boundaries of the organization? Another thought that might lead to dependence, if only you weren't so rigid. If only you weren't so stuck in your ways, then I could feel what? That's the question to ask. If they weren't so rigid, then how would you feel? Maybe you feel like, okay, well, I feel more at peace. Okay, why? What's the thought? That's the mindset work coming in. Are we really going to just give our emotional responsibility over to somebody else? Or are we going to own what's ours? Right? And then finally, I just felt like we needed something different. This might lead to that codependent change for the sake of change. Let's do it. Just felt like we needed something different, right? Go over to the person's house, and every time you go over there, there's a new paint color on the walls. just felt like we needed some change. But meanwhile, they're broke and, they got their car repoed, but the Sherwin-Williams is just, their stock's going up. Corey, what do you got?
As you were reading these, I was thinking about even the virtuous and vicious and engaging adaptability. Would you say that more than the other strengths, this one you actually need to have a goal like that you're really marching toward, or are they all like that? I mean, it just seems like there has to be a point in the future, an actual goal that we're trying to get to in order for this one to be engaged, or are they all like that?
Corey, my gut is that they're all like that. They're all, because these are just, what are these strengths? They're habits of thinking and feeling and acting that can be applied productively. That's how Gallup describes it. So this just shows, these are just expressions of how we show up, how we act, how we think, how we feel, but they don't describe what we move towards. They don't describe what that image of hope is that we have in our head. Okay. They don't describe what the goal is. But I guarantee you this, if that goal, that image that we're pursuing, that perceived good that we're pursuing is skewed, it's not the real good, then the expression of those talents is there's going to be some vice that shows up in the expression of those talents. So yes, I think what you're gathering here, it's so important to make sure that what you're pursuing, the ends that you're directing this talent are towards something that is truly good. And that's something that you can arrive at through good discernment, right? Otherwise, you're that adaptable person that's pursuing their own good. They get to be the one that decides, put all the strength on my back. I can put it all, it's all on me, right? That ungodly self-reliance that we said versus putting it on the Lord, like St. Paul says. Great. Corey, thank you. All right, team. All right, we are somewhat lean on the adaptability call today, and I think we might have squeezed as much juice out of this lemon as possible. But Cindy at 18 is coming in as our, congratulations, Cindy. You are the highest ranked person on the team, adaptability. I hope you're high in competition because then you can feel good about that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. But it's interesting because to me, this all speaks of having a growth mindset. And over the last year and a half, I find myself in situations just work-wise and in other places, just constantly asking the question, what am I supposed to learn? What more is to come? And it's funny how it almost gets frustrating when it gets kind of shut off. And other people aren't in that place. But I think in being adaptable, learning how to sit back, take it all in stride, and then just kind of see where the openings are to maybe move things forward and find solutions. So.
Okay. So the adaptability to be able to sit back and just have that hopeful attitude, you're saying, or just the growth minded. I love the language of the growth minded language.
Yeah, because I think, years ago in my younger years, I was, it has to be this way. And I just would kind of draw a line in the sand and that was it. And what I am learning in this particular strength in being adaptable is that it suddenly opens things up. Like if I can stop and consider other things, then things become figure outable. It doesn't have to be this black and white kind of thing. I can open my mind to possibilities.
Yeah. And that place of hope is something where the fruits of hope are you start to actually look for those opportunities versus just think that they aren't out there. Right. When we only think there's one way, we don't look for another way. But I hear you saying that adaptability is open to the prospects of there being another way, perhaps even a better way.
Right. And that it doesn't always have to be my way. Whereas
it doesn't always have to be my way.
I think years ago, no, it has to be this way. And I'd hang on to it and almost kind of squeeze the life out of it, which gets annoying for everyone else in the room. But now I think just being open to the possibility of like, I wonder what's going on here. What more could we be learning, and asking some of those questions.
Right. Beautiful. Cindy, thanks so much. All right, folks, we're going to wrap this one up. So thank you very much for being with us on the podcast here. Thanks for sticking with us with our little bit of a video snafus that we've got. You see what I look like without my nice magical new camera that we've got there, but that's okay. Thank you for being with us. CatholicCoaching.com is where you can learn how to participate on these calls. We have our Metanoia Catholic Academy. And what do we do in there? We focus on helping you embrace who you are, your unique design. We use tools like strengths for that. We also rely heavily on temperaments. It's one of those assessments that we use quite often. But then also, how do we tame that? What are the mindsets that we want to cultivate so that we can live in the virtuous expression of our unique design? It's really an academy and a community where people are coming to learn more about who they are. Not just who they are by themselves, but who they are in light of their creator and who they are in light of the relationship that the creator has invited them into. And so I like to call it a community of people that are really in very practical ways learning what it means to become a saint, but also in very particular ways learning what it means, like how the Lord is particularly calling them. And so it's a great community. So these are some of the people in our Metanoia Catholic community. We also have our coach training programs that we have there as well. Our Catholic coaching certification is going to be starting again here in the fall. And so be on the lookout for more information about that, but you can learn more about that at CatholicCoaching.com. And thanks. We've got a few more podcasts. We're going to have to explore what we're going to do next in terms of this, because we're getting to the end of having all of our recordings done for all 34 themes. So we'll figure something out. We'll adapt. We'll pivot and come up with something new. Great. All right. God bless everyone. Thank you.